Happy New Year, Detroit. Welcome to the first episode of 2021. We are Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Lower East Side here in the city, powered by the East Side Community Network and sponsored by none other than the Ford Foundation. Now a content partner to the new bridgedetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Davidson.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people on the East Side of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you listen to us on. We drop a new episode every week, so be sure to turn on those notifications. Today, we are happy to welcome artist, entertainer, entrepreneur, innovator, Afrofuturist, father, and resident of the North End, my friend, Bryce Detroit. Bryce, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Peace, 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 everybody. Thank you for having me once again, both of you. Yes.
We're
honored. So happy to finally get you here. We've been wanting to bring you on for a while, and the schedules just didn't work. So
Bryce is busy, Donna. Bryce,
Look who's talking, yo. Come on, man.
When you started listing all those jobs, I was like, no wonder we had to wait.
All right. I'm like, Bryce what don't you do, Bryce Detroit? You seem to do it all.
As I recall, when I met you, you were also training people to build homes or renovate homes. Is that true? Or do I have that confused?
No, my neighbors do though. So
okay.
My neighbors, I'm going to shout out Jason Lindy and Gabby Knox over on King Street. Those two are a part of a North End based co-op called Building Cooperatively. And a couple of years ago, they organized, along with the Michigan Historic Preservation Society, they organized a 10-week series of workshops for folks in the North End to learn how to do historic home preservation. And out of that 10-week series was birthed this new neighborhood co-op. So I'm adjacent to those people and am in support and actually work with them on a new home renovation project in the North End. And that's can talk more about that maybe later on when we're talking about like neighborhood-based economies and new economies. So yeah, short answer, no, but longer answer, yes. Those are my peoples.
Well, I'm so happy you found the time. I'm so happy that Bryce Detroit found the time finally to be guest on Authentically Detroit. I want to say happy new year to you guys once again. How was your holiday breaks? Did you all actually take a break? Bryce, did you take a break?
Yes, in real life. So for me, the solstice season, which in my life does start around the last weeks of November, that season is a very full and rich season, spiritually speaking, like spiritual agriculture speaking. That represents the end of the harvest season. So taking that time, the reflective, introspective time to really assess what are all the points of growth, behavioral growth, what are the points of identity that we are most proud of in their demonstration and in their, in the demonstration, in how we live life. And then also being honest with ourselves about what parts of our personality, what parts of our character did not serve us, maybe obsolete and or just straight up harmful. And then being honest enough to name those things and put forth the intention to weed those behaviors out. So yeah, man, Bryce takes himself off of the work schedule in December in a real way for that process. I'm grateful for that. Yep.
I love it. Donna, what about you? Professor Donna, President CEO Donna, podcast co-host Donna. Did you break for real?
I tried. So I took a break from Zoom. The only people I Zoomed with were family members. Unfortunately, that's the only way you can have a family reunion now. As you indicated, I have to prepare for this class, which starts next week. And just getting my syllabus finalized is very bureaucratic, you know. They're like, I don't like this word. Why don't you change this word? I'm like, really? You use the word Detroit too much. I'm sorry, the class is about Detroit. Well, why is it about Detroit? Isn't it any urban area? No. You know, so really having to defend my positions on things was interesting. But I did have help from an outstanding instructional director of the instructional process at Columbia, and she was phenomenal. And she just told me, you don't have to change it. You don't have to do that. Don't listen to them. She didn't quite say that, but you know, kind of. So I tried to stay true to my purpose and intent. And as you know, the intent I have is to really highlight the race issues in our city in a way that does not only speak to the longstanding injustice against Black people, but also the strengths of our people. I don't want anybody to walk away believing that we are a broken people with no promise, no capacity of our own. You're going to walk away from this class understanding who we have been, not just now, but since we first got here. Came here as slaves, you know, in the 18th century, but in the 19th century, we were really holding it down in many ways. The Underground Railroad and the protest and rebellion of Black people in Detroit was so significant, and we've been rebelling ever since, you know. And so I want people to understand that context and then walk away understanding the specific challenges that we face and strategies to overcome them. So I'm excited.
I'm super excited too, Bryce. I don't know if you saw the announcement that Donna will be teaching this course at Columbia University, but with the announcement went live. Yeah, right?
Yes,
I was so excited. I'm like, this is so major. I'm putting it on my resume. Like, it's going on mine too. Thank you, Donna, for getting us this gig. I appreciate it.
So I'm gonna need you to come help teach a class, okay? I'm sitting in the syllabus. I'm gonna let you pick which one you're gonna co-teach, Orlando, and I'm not joking.
We're always talking about we're in this together. We're in that together too.
You gotta work. This is how it works. Okay, so I'm just gonna let you figure out which one you're gonna co-teach. But yeah.
I can't wait. I would love to see the syllabus. Congratulations once again. Nobody, and when I say this adamantly, nobody has been able to shut me up about our teaching position at Columbia.
But you know what? Listen, here's the problem. I have all of these assigned readings, right? And so, I mean, you know, you have to assign some readings. And it occurred to me, I have to read all this stuff. This is a lot, okay? So, you know, here I am at my age, learning again and expanding again and growing again. And that's really exciting. And I just hope to make sure that what I learn and what I'm able to do there can be also brought to bear in the city of Detroit, because we also need to understand our greatness. Our young people need to understand where we come from. And anybody who comes to this city needs to understand you didn't come into an empty slate. We were doing things long before you thought of it. Now, we had a staff retreat today, and I rolled out some of this information. We brought in a race equity trainer, but I thought before we even get into this, I need people, because we have people from other places, to understand who exactly we are. And it was kind of sobering to some of the folks. It was like, oh, wow, we didn't know the history. I live in the suburbs. I had no idea. Well, you know, now I think that I want you to have this new idea now that you're living here, working here, and trying to be impactful here. You need to understand who you're working with. So
yeah, absolutely. Congrats again.
What about you, Orlando? Did you take a break? I know that's a long way of saying no, I didn't take a break, but did you?
No, I did take a break. It's so funny because I think you and I were talking about this offline, that my transition from ECN to Bridge was immediate. There was no breathing room in between time. And about a week into the job at Bridge Detroit, I got sick. And so I was trying to like live and recover from being sick for about a month. And then as soon as I felt well enough, I was back to work and worked the entire year, right? And so the break couldn't come at a better time. And let me tell you what my body would not allow me to do. My body would not allow me to do anything but lounge around. Like I laid around, I binge watched a couple of shows on Netflix. I may have checked Facebook once or twice and posted a few times. And I read a lot, slept a lot, and you know, my weekly trips to Whole Foods and Target. But that was pretty much it. I really did not work. I didn't do any work, and I was proud of myself. And I don't think my body would have let me. I didn't realize how tired I was. Like I literally was gripping. My mother would say, "You were gripping the bed." I was, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Every minute of it. While on break, I stumbled across a couple of dating apps that I've since deleted. Donna, dating in 2020, 2021 sucks. Like Bumble, Facebook date. Like I tried both of those and I'm like, yeah, I give up. I'm not, I can't do it. So that was like the fun part, like going through, you know, just this swipe thing. I was just like, I'm a little old school. So we got to go back to, you know, I can't wait till we can go back to the world where we can meet people and talk with folks, because that's where I thrive. But I did have a good
you
break.
get, the harder it is to be old school. It's like, okay, there's only 3 people my age who are single, available, and worth knowing. So I had to hit the internet to pickings are slim. Okay, you're young.
And I thought about you too when I tried Bumble for like the week, because I was like, this is Donna's. I don't know if our listeners remember Donna and Kevin, when Donna got back from her honeymoon, her and Kevin came on her husband and they talked about their origin story, and it originated online. And I'm just like, man, maybe I'm gonna be like, you know, Donna and Kevin and find my soulmate. And I was just like, yeah, no.
So we weren't doing that swipe thing. That might be the issue.
Oh, okay.
It was a different app. It was, you know, and I was very clear on what I was looking for and what I wasn't looking for. And I think he probably got a whole lot more interest than I did, because he was getting like thousands of women. I got a lot of people reaching out, but, you know, it was like only 1 or 2 that was a candidate, you know. And I didn't stay on there long. I met him. I was on, he was one of the first people I met. The other person, I met him and he wanted me to go to his high school reunion with him the next week. And I thought that might be a red flag. So I said no. And then I met like, we don't know each other. But it only takes the right person. And I just feel like dating is a crapshoot anyway, Orlando. So you're going to have to do certain things. The reality is getting to know people is really hard. And it doesn't matter where you meet them, at the grocery store, in church. You know, you
have to be Target for me, because that's the only social I have. I'm like Target. Like I get dressed up to go to Target, Bryce. Like I'd be like dressed to the nines, smelling good. Oh, and the other thing that's pretty cool is I'm partnering with the Wayne State University Medical School to teach one class in a series of classes under the guise of Healing Between the Lines. And that is really centered around, you know, certain competencies that physicians need to have when they are working in the city of Detroit, in a Black city, in a city that's primarily people of color. And, you know, it's so crazy. Beyond this initiative, this is a pilot initiative. The medical school doesn't really have racial competency, equity, lens in its curriculum at all. And so I was asked to teach a class. And so, yeah, maybe I'll add Prof to my list of accomplishments too with the medical school.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
so I'm
Congrats,
excited about that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I mean, I'm excited about that. And, you know, I'm glad to hear that Wayne State Medical School has decided that patient experiences matter.
Yeah, it does, right? All right, guys, it's time for Fresh Off the Press, news that we are thinking about. If you have pieces that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. Donna, fresh off the press.
Okay. Orlando, I'm pulling it up. So can you read the heading while I pull it up? I'm sorry.
M.L. Elric takes free press buyout and he eyes run for Detroit City Council. That is Alan Lingle from Deadline Detroit reporting.
So that's one of these good news, bad news stories, right? The good news is ML Elric will no longer be at the Free Press. This is how I found out about it, no lie. I was reading the Free Press yesterday as I scroll through all of the news, on Sundays, and I saw this video thing talking about the fall of Kwame Kilpatrick, and it just pissed me off. I'm like, we're talking about Kwame now? We haven't even started talking about Gabe Leland yet. How are we still talking about Kwame? We have a president who's trying to steal an election, who just pardoned every criminal at the federal level, but we're talking about Kwame? It's just crazy to me. Gabe Leland is a full city council meeting sitting at the table, and we're talking about Kwame Kilpatrick. And so I was so irritated, I posted about that on Facebook, and somebody jumped in my inbox and told me, hey, I saw you talking about that. You know, the ML Elric is running for city council in District 4, where I live. And, and that was just totally unacceptable to me. I cannot imagine. This is a man who has really made his name tearing down Black public officials. And, even if people don't like Kwame, this is a man who runs stories like this. When Gabe Leland was first indicted, rather than say Gabe Leland is indicted, he wrote a story that says current Detroit City Council members, something like this, joins a bunch of other criminals in whatever. And then he had faces of all of these Black people instead of faces of Gabe Leland. And the story was centered. He was talking about Kay Everett.
Oh, I remember Kay.
You're gonna try to raise the damn dead? Okay.
Right.
He's talking about Monica Kanye. She's not there. You know who we need to be focused on? Gabe Leland. So I was really irritated. Then I found out that he was running for District 4 City Council. And I don't know who thought that was a good idea. I don't imagine it's going to go over very well, because there just not enough white people who like him to vote for him. And I don't know a single Black person who thinks this man should be my representative. So I just wanted to bring that up, that, you can't just decide that you can have a job. And he owes the citizens of Detroit an apology for his racist covering of political news.
Well, it's really interesting, the point that you make about what the Free Press ran yesterday, 11 some odd years later, since Kwame Kilpatrick has been gone. One of the things that we, as Yusuf Shakur would say, overstand in the city of Detroit, that the Kilpatrick name sells papers. And for me, it was nothing but clickbait, right? In the midst of probably what was a widespread break on part of most of the staff at the Free Press. That's my speculation. The other piece that we overstand, and the piece that I continue to try to drill in everybody's head, is this narrative war that is going on, and who has narrative power. It is no secret that the Detroit Free Press historically has participated in racist and disenfranchising narratives against Black people in the city of Detroit. And to drudge up something that is, over 11 years old, to something that is traumatic for a lot of folks in the city, as citizens, and even folks who worked within that administration, who were stripped, who had no bearings or no hand in wrongdoing, who lost careers, who lost their careers and the ability to provide for their families, to drudge that up when there was nothing, there was no need to do that. And we have current elected officials and people who are no longer elected roaming free without any follow-up is a disgrace. Gabe Leland still gets to vote at city council. Rick Snyder, the governor, during the Flint water crisis, is walking free. You know what I mean? Like, this is, once again, a huge miss. And it speaks to the importance of Black media outlets like a Bryce Detroit, like a Michigan Chronicle, to counter that narrative. And I got to be honest, we spoke about this in our editorial meeting today. And we have to begin to have these conversations, and we're figuring out what that looks like. But to me, that was absolutely unacceptable, and I know that it triggered a lot of people in the city. Bryce, do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, sort of. And Donna, it's adding on a bit to what you're saying when you're saying that this guy theoretically owes the citizens of Detroit an apology. Um, for me, my there are sentiments coming up around from in the vein of media literacy that have to do with the way that our people still consume media, how we've been conditioned to just digest media in a very uncritical way. Um, in particular, how we have been conditioned to be non-critical of media that disparages our own people, and how that to me uh, is a point of conversation that needs to be uplifted. Uh, it's challenging for us to even at scale value what a Bridge Detroit is for our people in terms of narrative broadcast and authentic stories. It's challenging to appreciate the value of what we lost in a Michigan citizen. If there is, if there's still this piece around cultivating the pride and the sense of self to even demand narratives that project us in a positive light. So yeah, like that's just what comes up for me um right now, having really kind of first hearing about this in this moment. Um yeah, just really one of my prayers for 2021 for our people is an increased in critical questioning, in critical observation, and uh, a demand for more, a demand for more that's really grounded in a love for self,
Mm.
um, that's really grounded in a reverence for where we are now and everything that people in our direct bloodline have done, the shoulders that we're standing on, the shoulders that we collectively stand on. But yeah, the prayer for us to be so grounded in that reverence that our triggers and our sensitivities change to the point where it would be an immediate trigger, an immediate red flag if a narrative this this disparaging, this overtly disparaging, this overtly agenda comes out. It would be impossible for this kind of thing to even live, because it would be an immediate uproar because our sensibilities will be properly oriented.
Mm.
Uh, so we'll leave it there on that prayer for our people in 2021.
I love that. And while we were talking about, journalism and narrative, I want to acknowledge that Marie Teasley has passed away. A longtime journalist, worked at the Michigan Chronicle as a columnist for 25 years. She was 93 years old, told a lot of stories here in the city of Detroit. And I haven't seen the outlets pick that up yet. And so I wanted to make sure that we're on record in acknowledging her contribution to narrative power here in the city of Detroit and for working at the Chronicle all those years. Fresh off the press, Governor Whitmer signs college athlete compensation bills. I don't know where this is typically, sort of a controversial conversation to have around whether college athletes should be compensated for their work, for their likeness and image. But for the first time in state history, college athletes in Michigan will be able to get paid for the use of their names and likeness under the bills that were recently signed by Governor Whitmer. And right now, the NCAA currently bars athletes from receiving compensation from the use of their names and likenesses. And of course, we know that they appear in video games and all kinds of ads, and they sell out stadiums. They literally sell out stadiums. And so she signed 2 bills that will be instituted into state law in 2023. And we got to acknowledge that this was sponsored by a member of the Detroit delegation, Representative Joe Tate, who played for Michigan State University on the football team. And so this legislation bans schools from prohibiting student athletes from forming promotional deals and brand deals, except in the case of apparel deals that conflict with the school's apparel deal. So you can't sign an apparel deal with Adidas if the school has a deal with Jordan, right? Educational institutions would not be permitted to interfere with athletes' scholarships, even if they earn additional income, and they can engaging in a student athlete in a sports contract before their college eligibility would no longer be a crime. And so sports contracts and things are a go, and it's no longer a crime. And having mentored and mentor student athletes, male student athletes, most notably, one of my mentees is Martell Pettaway, who of West Virginia University. Now he's playing at another school in Kentucky or Tennessee. I can't remember, Tennessee, I believe, pursuing his graduate degree. He has a full schedule of training, academic classes, practices, photo shoots, the whole nine, in addition to his game days. And I still get the occasional message like, hey, I need to grab some groceries, or I need to do this and I need to do that. Can you help a brother out? And I'm like, man, this is crazy. This is crazy. So you have college athletes who are on full scholarships who can't afford to buy themselves food still.
Yeah. and while the coaches paid millions of dollars.
Right.
And the coaching staff and the universities are bankrolling all of that. It is a ridiculous concept. If you worked and you had an academic scholarship and you worked in a science lab, you could be paid for what you do. They're really the only scholarship students who cannot earn money. And it's based on this pretension of amateurism, which is ridiculous. As a sports mom, I'm track mom, and then my son actually signed to run track at Michigan. He didn't finish the season, but he did sign to run track at Michigan. His schedule is controlled by the school. The school decides what you're going to do. And when you start getting into, now he was running track, so that's not good. But the football players have no control. And when you say that this is an educational institution, this is one of the reasons Philip stopped running track at Michigan, because he was taking econ, and his coaches did not want him to take econ, a difficult course, during track season, because they said he would not do well. So the first thing he said was, do you know who the F I am? And the second thing he said was, I'm done. Okay. And by the way, he got an A in econ and was tutoring other young people, but they looked at a Black man and assumed he could not handle his business. But I think that really, when you start talking about the academic control also that they have, and the fact that the scholarship is not 100%, you can't work a summer job when you are a student athlete, when you're in one of the income revenue sports. So I think that it is a matter of social justice that Black males be treated like any other students. They are not there to make money, and their likenesses. And listen, they make money off of all kinds of people, but the main people that are making money off of U of M were Black men. Same thing with Michigan State. Those are the faces. Those are the jerseys that sell.
Bryce, do you have anything to add to this?
It only makes sense, for sure. For me, am looking forward to conversations being framed differently. It's one thing to frame this as, student athletes are no longer prohibited from earning income. like it's one thing to frame it that way. It's another thing to frame it though, institutionalized, you know what I mean? Slavery still legal at
Come on, man.
collegiate athletic levels. Like that's a different framing. That's a different story. Really appreciate Donna how when you bring up this pretension of amateurism, because even that speaks to this false framing and not the actual reality of the uh, the industrial, institutional, economic engines that collegiate sports really are, and how from that perspective, excuse me, then we're simply talking about capitalism. Like it's not even like a moral thing. It's just like now we're talking about labor. We're talking about labor within a capitalist institution, and that kind of framing has its own implications. And to me, we can take these conversations to new places, to deeper places, if we no longer frame them like, okay, there was an adjustment made to this system that, for all intents and purposes, is okay. Like, no, that's not what's going on here. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not an adjustment made to something that just needed retooling or retuning. This is the incremental, systematic dismantling, chiseling of antiquated, violent systems, repressive systems, and the way that dismantling looks like is it looks like these new pieces of policy every now and again. But these new pieces of policy are accumulating, and what they effectively do is destroy, deconstruct oppressive legislation, and in doing that, actually, pardon me, chiseling away at the bricks though, of these old institutions. So
you can use profanity. We would just have to put explicit on it. Use of
there we
Shakur
go.
makes
Okay.
it rated R every time he comes on. And so we're back. You, Bryce.
Boom. So yeah, appreciate what's going on, and hopefully, not hopefully, and putting this out there as a prayer, that this creates a new economic opportunity for a whole population of Black sports agents and sports managers, because now we have folks who you can really work with at the collegiate levels, and that's a whole new audience. So that's exciting, in that way. Yep.
Yeah.
You know, when you think of what is it, Ed Martin,
Mhm.
the basketball agent or whatever, who went to prison.
Yep.
And you know, the whole way that Chris Webber, and they had them up in front of Congress, like they commit. You have
Remember that?
whole criminals. You have a criminal in the White House, and they treated this man like he was just the worst of the worst of the worst. It just pisses me off. And I love the allusion to slavery. Some people hate that. They say, oh, slaves were poor and slaves, and you don't trivialize slavery. But see, when somebody owns your body like that, it's the ownership concept that gets to me.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
know, people feel as though they're so lucky. Nobody is lucky to be owned. Okay, because I'm not trying to sell myself to anybody, even for $1 million. Although I think I'm worth more. But you know, I don't. To sell yourself is to minimize your own agency, to minimize your humanity. And I just feel as though college and professional sports are dehumanizing. I have to be honest with you. I find it harder and harder to even want to watch a football game or a basketball game. I cannot stand the way fans behave and they disrespect these young athletes. I can't stand the character assassination. And so I'm happy for them, but unfortunately, I'm happy at a time where I find myself disengaging from that whole conversation.
Yeah, there's a catch-22. We got to work on the culture of collegiate sports as well. It's so funny. You got to tell these folks to behave, mind your manners. Literally, I remember being at school, and when Michigan State would come to Michigan down the street at EMU, we were all down there. I mean, you know, if I would say this, if it were Black kids acting a nut like they were, whole tanks and trucks will be dispatched to pick us up and throw us in prison, so, or in jail. So yeah, great point, Donna. Our thanks to Anna Nichols from the Associated Press for writing that up. It was also picked up in Crane's Detroit. That wraps up our Fresh Off the Press. If you have pieces that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. Bryce, you have certainly been keeping busy with all of the things that you have going on. And we have a ton of questions to ask you. We're probably not going to get to all of them, but I really want to start about your latest campaign that is still reverberating throughout the city, really. And it started with a street sign that said, "Hood closed to gentrifiers."
Yes, sir.
Bryce Detroit, what he has on the hoodie. Tell us what that means, what's the goal, and how did this get started?
Boom. So we'll start here. The idea came about, it was inspired 2 years ago, and it literally came as my own way of beginning to do this work of making my personal and our collective neighborhood cultural policies, making those things visible. Now, why all of a sudden did making cultural policies, cultural norms, why did making that visible become a thing for me? Well, it was really based on experiences with collaborating with people from outside of Detroit, and people, and it does matter that there is a racial implication in these collaborations. So collaborating with folks who are not, who are foreign to the culture of Detroit at large, and then the microcultures, so to speak, that live within our neighborhoods. So being foreign to that, and then just also being outside of, not being of African ancestry, that creates a significant amount of learning, to say the least. It positions you as a student because you're coming into the game not knowing a whole lot. So one of the cultural norms of our people is sharing information orally. Like, yes, we invented scribing and writing. At the same time, we are also a very oral people. So to tell people your cultural norms, to tell people your customs in a collaborative context, this is me informing you as a point of neighborhood diplomacy. So to be communicating from from that standpoint, and then to have as a repeated response, especially when their behavior, when someone's behavior is being brought into question, when a repeated response is, it's difficult to understand and to abide by all of your cultural norms because none of them are written down. We don't see them anywhere. So it's like, all right, we done heard that shit far too many times over these past couple of years. And it's you, and we would hear it. It would be a very popular refrain when folks were being out of pocket. And when they were asked when folks from outside of the neighborhood were being asked to be brought into accountability, and not even accountability at first, because accountability is a step in the process. But the first part of the process is, please, let's look together at your behaviors and the impact that they've had. Before we can even hold you accountable, will you agree to at least review your behaviors? So that part, like people not wanting to do that, and then making it, rendering us, like creating a feudal situation to actually hold somebody accountable. So it's like, all right, never again will Bryce be in a situation, or does Bryce want anybody in my neighborhood to be in a situation, or Detroit period, to be in a situation where they're faced with somebody from outside of their cultural scenario, and then that person is saying, I'm not going to respect you because I don't see your cultural norms in writing. So it's like, all right, Bryce is going to start to project his cultural norms. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to make it real clear, very clear. So the overall project is called Road Work, and there's a metaphor behind road work. On as above is below, on earth as it is in heaven. The first installation in the road work project is Hood Close to Gentrifiers. So the sentiment Hood Close to Gentrifiers, for me, it is one, me putting language to my own sentiment, my own personal politic. Two, it is the end of a sentence, in a manner of speaking. So it's just one half of a full sentiment. The first part of the sentiment is, over the past 10, well, in my case, over the past decade, but in many others cases in my neighborhood, the past 15, 20 years, what has happened is a number of us have created new opportunities to stabilize properties in our neighborhoods, new opportunities to develop and incubate businesses in our neighborhoods, new opportunities to practice architecture and design in our neighborhoods. And because of us being self-determined and bringing these opportunities into the neighborhood, because of us being self-determined and bringing these new resources in the neighborhoods, such to the point where in the last 5 years, like through my own collaborations, have brought in over $1.5 million. And that's just me and my collaborations, not to mention the collaborations of my neighbors. If we start to add up all of the collaborations of just members of Oakland Avenue Artists Coalition, we're talking about at least $3.5 million since 2013. So because we've been doing that, we've opened up new opportunities to develop our land. We've opened up new opportunities to develop our own leadership. And we've opened up these new ways, these new practices that are actually ancestrally grounded, they're culturally relevant, and they're sexy, and they're fly as fuck. So that's why the hood is closed to gentrifiers, because what gentrification is, that represents conventional business as usual. Gentrification is a very old modality for developing Black and brown spaces. Well, we're closed to that kind of business as usual because we've already opened up the new opportunities, the new channels for resources. We've already opened up the new mechanisms to develop our own leadership, and we've opened up our own abilities. We've activated our own abilities to do the work of building our own environments. So we can necessarily say that we are closed to conventional business as usual.
I did not expect for it to get the response that it did. You debuted with a lot of applause, but also a ton of criticism. So much so that the sign was vandalized. So it yes. I didn't know that would be controversial.
That's been the project. Yes. All of my work is provocative, whatever that means to the individual. But yes, it is inspiring. It's designed to excite the senses. One of the things that was a surprise for me it was not a surprise, but it was like, oh wow, this is the state of things. Was to see um, the degree of self-hate that still exists. Like how many people who look just like all three of us would show up in the comments just to say something negative about the image of this black man. It's not even necessarily the content. It's just like, oh, he's trying to sound smart, or oh, black people, uh, they don't like nice things. Oh, they just want the hood. Like you're saying they like it's not you, person.
But
You know what I'm saying?
but
Like, oh, they just love to live in poverty.
but the reality is, what white people have taken to doing is opening up these fake accounts and putting a black face on it. And
mm,
those are not always black people. So I'd be real careful about that, because when you start reading something that sounds like a white person, I bet you it is a white person, in a lot of instances. And I'm not assuming everybody there's no black people who do that, because I had to delete a couple comments on Facebook this morning because somebody just rubbed me the wrong way, but that's like 1 out of 100. So, I really think that's very possibly what it is. They think they're so clever. I have two thoughts. One is that in the North End, I have a question. Is there gentrification in the North End?
absolutely. And then that goes for me really quickly just to define gentrification for myself and for those people who have asked me tens of thousands of times. So a gentrifier is anyone who, through their behavior, perpetuates harm, uh, violence, or an immoral act. So that the way that ends up looking is we have people who, and also need to name this really quickly. Uh, my first time being introduced in real life to gentrification on an academic level, it was referencing 17th and 18th century France. The gentry was was a part of the military, and their job was to go clear a land of whatever the population that was there at the time, usually an indigenous population of some sort, but it's to go clear the land for the colonizing colonizing country, clear the land for their nobility.
Mm.
So gentrification in a classical context does 100% have a root or a layer of classism, because it wasn't just clearing the land for anybody, it was clearing the land for nobility or people of good standing, is how Wikipedia talks about it. Um, but yeah, so naming that the gentry, classically speaking, and modern day, the gentry has a class implication. It was always about clearing a land for a new desirable class of people. Uh, Gentrification is a militaristic tactic. The way that so from those perspectives, just like even putting that out there as a way to frame how we talk about gentrification, um, for me, one of the most important aspects of this campaign, based on the feedback, is it's shown me how many of our people think that gentrification is synonymous with neighborhood improvement. That's like gentrification is synonymous with beautification. It is not. So when somebody says fuck gentrification, no, they are not saying I'm against beauty. No, they're not saying I'm against amenities and quality of life. It is saying I'm against this militaristic mode of displacing and erasing my people. Like that's what it's really saying. And whether the person who is saying fuck gentrification or hood close to gentrifiers, whether they have all the history that dates back to France and then goes to England, they don't have to. As long as all it's needed to really get what's going on is that gut feeling that something is wrong and something we should feel that something is wrong with our people being displaced and erased, and that being considered the process of beautifying our own
Mm.
place.
Well, right, right.
Woo!
And
Go
rather
ahead,
than
Donna.
giving us the resources to beautify our own, they give resources to other people to come in and establish a foothold in our communities. And so I look at it as colonization as well, right? I
Mhm.
think that if you look at Detroit as a colony, everything makes sense. When you look at it as a city, you get confused, like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. But when you look at the colonization of Detroit, the fact that the power structure exists outside of our city, and look at what happened in the theft and just the transfer of wealth through emergency management, through bankruptcy, through tax foreclosures. You had just a whole theft of our wealth, and so the same people who made it bad are now coming in like we're going to make it good, and it's like this isn't new. This is no different than slum clearance. This is no different than what
Urban
happened with
renewal.
Black Wall Street.
Mhm.
But we keep on renaming things in a way that hides the real harm. I'm in the process, like I said, I have to read all these books. And so this one book I was reading was called Reinventing Detroit. And the first chapter was really hard for me to read, but I got through it. But I got to the part where they were talking about Detroit's progress. And they said, well, gentrification, they spoke specifically about the North End and almost mocked the idea that gentrification was happening there. And the way that they do it is saying, oh, wait a minute. Now, this book is a couple of years old, so we'll give it a couple of years. But I knew 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that gentrification was planned for the North End. So no excuse. Time is no excuse. And they knew it. But what their explanation is, well, the housing values are not high. So they don't recognize gentrification until it's already complete. So
Mm.
the process of gentrification where rents are going up, landlords are displacing people, some properties are selling for more, all of those signs and signals are things that they don't look at. They don't look at the installation of what is Tyson Gersh's project in
The
that
Michigan
neighborhood.
urban farming
Yeah, that
center.
whole geometric farming project and the outside attention. When you look at that, when you look at on the east side, I hate to name names, but you can't help it, Hance Woodlands, right? And you look at these people who are white people coming into the community and establishing control over large sections of land, and then disrespecting and or disregarding the indigenous people inside that community. To me, even if a single property value didn't go up, that's gentrification. It's claiming and trying to own the history of people and really renaming things and redoing things in such a way that the culture is lost. And, you know, I look at like this, community change is inevitable, right? Communities change all the time. I think that, where many of us live, there were generations of people who lived where we are on that same ground before us, and their houses are somewhere underground, and you did dump them in and you build a new house on top of that. So we know that change happens. And certainly Detroit is not the newest place in the world, but Black Detroit was so hard fought. We had to fight for our place on this earth. We had to fight for every bit of political power. And the intentional efforts to dismantle Black Detroit is something we should fight against. I don't think we can fight against it until we build awareness of people. First of all, a lot of people to understand what we're fighting for and understand the forces, because I think the way that white supremacy works, white supremacy controls the narrative. And we've got to re-educate, decolonize our minds. I guess the people say that all the time. I still think it's cool. But we've got to decolonize our thinking such that we understand what's truly at stake. Because some of us will defend gentrification. There's this one documentary I watched about gentrification I want to say it was in Oregon, and maybe it was in Portland, but I don't know. Anyway, there was this woman who was living in this area that had a lot of crime, and there was a lot of things going on in the area. And so when they talked about gentrifying the area, she was gung ho. And they studied her over a period of 5 years. In year 5, she felt uncomfortable walking down the street. In year 6, she relocated to Texas because it was no longer her home. And so I think because no other solution is offered other than white people coming in and saving the day, people buy into gentrification. We need to produce and to start popularizing alternatives and then demonstrating alternative ways of improving our community such that we don't look for that kind of salvation. And so what you're doing in the North End with your garage and what you're doing in partnership with some other people, it seems like that is ushering in some of those demonstration projects. This cooperative that you formed, can you talk a little bit about your work and how you are fighting against gentrification?
So for me and many others of us as founding members of Oakland Avenue Artists Coalition, confronting gentrification for us looks like actively imagining, basically standing in our agency, practicing imagining on our land, our vacant properties, practicing imagining how would we activate underutilized properties. And then we've practiced getting grants, like we practiced playing the whole Detroit philanthropy game in order to secure funds to stabilize our properties and activate our properties. So that, which is a major part about my project. So a major part about the Hood Close the Gentrifiers project is, yes, we're naming the architectural, the socio-political, the economic violence that occurs on a military campaign level, and we call that gentrification. Yeah, we're going to name those things because it's important to give the context for which becomes a backdrop for the stories celebrating what self-determination looks like in the 21st century, the stories that are celebrating what are the new practices that are becoming new models for how diasporic African people in Detroit, how Black people in Detroit are redeveloping their own spaces, and how we're designing and directing the cultural and economic activity in our spaces. Like, this is about telling new stories that celebrate the new wins. Because just like Donna, you said it, you say it all the time, you know what I mean, in many different ways as well, but we need to know of the good that's going on. The more that we know, then the more that we can choose to participate and whatever that participation looks like. But in that participation, because of that awareness, then we are building out more and more of the new. We're building out more and more of the liberation. We're building out more and more of the justice. In order to participate, though, we got to know. We got to be aware. So that's a major part of this project. And that's all to the point of we have stories to tell because we're practicing confronting gentrification through freeing up the land ourselves, through taking back the land ourselves. This is not just theoretical conversations. These are not quote unquote emotional rantings. These are people who are doing the work, and in doing the work, recognize that a part of doing the work is telling our own stories.
Bryce, I want to ask you, but thank you for that. I want to ask you about Afrofuturism. We're hearing the term a lot lately, and just from firsthand experience, I know that North End is a stronghold or epicenter for a lot of the movement here in the city of Detroit. For our listeners, what does it mean to be an Afrofuturist, and how does that play out in community building, organizing, your artistry, and entertainment?
Boom. So we'll start by saying this. The word Afrofuturism is a handle. It's a label, just like the word hip hop is a handle or a label. So, excuse me, hip hop, if we take it back to like some 1950s, 1960s slang, hip is to know, hop means the movement. So hip hop essentially means to know the movement, to be aware of the social, cultural, political happenings in your world. Afrofuturism, essentially, if you break it down, it is a diasporic African in the present, uh, thinking about the future, holding an image of the future that they want, and then based on this image of the future, then it's let me design my behaviors now. Let me behave in ways right now that will lead to those future outcomes. So Afrofuturism is just a word to describe what our ancestors have always been doing. Us in the moment, thinking about what is the relationship that I want to have with my environment, what's the relationship I want to have with my peoples, and what's the way to get there. Let's look at in the past, how have our people done it in the past? What's gone right, what's gone wrong, what can we innovate? And then from referencing the past in our present, we can design a path to a future state. So that's all Afrofuturism describes, is us just being us and doing things now to, on purpose, influence the future.
And that's interesting because I always thought of Afrofuturism as like a literary genre. And that's how I've encountered it, right? And one of my favorite authors is Tanana Reeve Dew, and she is promoting this workshop on Afrofuturism and talking about how art is the process of doing that. Now I'm hearing that Afrofuturism is really bigger than that, that it's a whole way of thinking that can be captured in art, but it can also be captured in our community building processes. And
Absolutely.
I absolutely love that. We were just having a conversation today about how we look at housing, right?
Mm.
We look at housing as a place, a unit for an individual family. Mm-hmm. That's either rented or it's, purchased, ideally purchased, because home ownership is the only thing that's respected in this nation. But, if we look at other ways, there's the whole concept of a kibbutz. There's a whole concept of co-housing. There's a whole concept of cooperative housing, boarding homes, where people are not required to have individual units, but can live collectively. And when you start talking about building resilience and supports inside of a community, collectivism is one way to maximize possibilities. Now, the only way we look at it
in our DNA, it's who we are. We
exactly, but we look at it as a man, his wife, and children. And so if a woman is lacking a husband, then we say, well, she's bound to be poor. But what if communities came together and you had some women who were living with their children, some women married, some men who were single fathers, but collectively, we are sharing our strengths. And it's not about your marital status. It is about your belonging to this collective where you are a participant. Imagine if we organized the hood to look more like that than trying to replicate the suburban model and the white
and take on this rugged individualism that is
the nuclear family
supremacy. Yes.
Okay. Yes. The nuclear family doesn't really work when you are not part of this, wealth. And I don't even know if it works for white people because, I think that this concept, well, I'm just saying, listen, there's still a gap between the mortality of Black and white people.
Absolutely.
So white people's lifespans are going down, not up. You have a whole epidemic of suicides and you have an epidemic of drug use. So we have to look at the whole culture as being kind of sick. And the whole way we organize our culture, everybody out for himself, everybody in this individual mode of trying to achieve and success. And if you fail, then you are banished from the team or whatever it is, and all of the materialism that goes within it. But when you look at collectivism, it kind of banishes the whole concept of individual material accumulation and really says, let's look at our shared material accumulation. So I'd be interested in figuring out how we go about doing community visioning where we can bring in Afrofuturistic thinking. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, one is the first ways to bring in Afrofuturistic perspectives and thinking into community building, community development conversations is creating containers. So whichever of us finds ourselves facilitating spaces or convening conversations, then knowing that one of our primary objectives is to make a space for active imagination. The thing about futurism, whether it's Afrofuturism, European futurism, Indo-futurism, it's all about, it starts with the imagination, imagining a future scenario, knowing that in this imagining that what you are actually doing is beginning to paint on the canvas of reality a future state of being, knowing that this is not, excuse me, some play. This is an actual exercise in creating and manifesting. This is an actual exercise in self determination. This is an exercise in power. And the first exercise is let's imagine together. Let's imagine an ideal. Your ideal can and should be different than that person's ideal, but it's that. Just knowing that one of our primary jobs as conveners, as facilitators of these new culture, these new economy, these new neighborhood conversations is creating spaces and containers for radical imagination, first and foremost.
I love that radical imagination, radical love, coupled with radical love.
Yeah.
We it is needed, and I think this is a great time while America and the world is sort of confronted with this reckoning on race for us to radically reimagine the way we organize our communities, the way we do development and planning in our communities. And I think it is a great opportunity and an impetus, especially for our nonprofit development partners to begin to model as they continue to iteratively engage residents in our neighborhoods throughout the city, and scaling it from there. Uh, Being short on time, I think one of the questions we want to ask all of our guests this year in 2021, leading up into the elections here in the city of Detroit, is the fact that this year is an election year in the city of Detroit, and we will have races for mayor and races for city council, and even the city clerk is coming up for grabs once again. I want to ask you, what are you looking for out of someone who will be asking for your vote at the executive level, the legislative level, and other races here in the city of Detroit?
For me, I'm going to be looking, I'm going to be looking at their career thus far. Um, Even though my work is so grounded in creating the new, I'm very aware that the only way that we're going to get to the new is through transitioning out of this old. To that point, there are people who whose work right now, their career, it speaks to um, reinforcing the old. There are people whose work and their career speaks to creating, it speaks to interrogating the old. It speaks to creating mechanisms by which to get from the old, repurpose the old in ways that benefit where we're striving to go. So Bryce is going to be looking at people's career, uh, in particular, folks who have been doing work that speaks to this moment of transition, speaks to this old that does not work, and actually doing the work of creating mechanisms that get us to more just places. Uh, as well, we'll be listening to folks, listening to the words that people are using. I mean, oh, on a real level, bro, it's me's and people's like yous and folk and like our peoples. Like we're the peoples who have been bringing a lot of innovation to the work and to the spaces for the past 5, 10 years. So it's a lot of our lingo already out here. It's a lot of our frameworks already out here, and we know what it sounds like when somebody's just talking stuff, when they're just like regurgitating buzzwords. So I'm going to really just be keyed in to the authenticity of how people are speaking. Um, because man, we already know the people who are doing the deepest work and the most impactful work, and we know how that work sounds. And we also know how it sounds when people are just speaking fluff and using the latest buzzwords. So
What is the word, the platform that Duncan has rolled out, the People's Plan or something like that?
Yeah, it's called the people. Yeah, yeah, that's what it's called. Actually.
wow.
Yeah.
It's like,
Case in
really?
point. Case in point.
It's like, I'm trying to look at what's in the People's Plan. It just looks like the same old plan to me, but what can I say? Job training. you know, more
It
money in
was
the job
heavy
training
job training.
system.
Yes, it was a lot of job
And
training in there.
the people are trying to eat. The people need a place to live. The people need transportation. The people need environmental safety. And your
Yes.
plan is just a little thing. People need water, not just on moratorium. They need a reduction. So for me, I'm really looking at that, and I'm hopeful that we can encourage those people who are running to be a little bit more ambitious than job training.
Mm.
But and I'm not trying to minimize job training. Job training and job placement is really important, but people need jobs. A lot of people want to own things too. But there was just a report as we were sitting here released that the Motor City Match program had a 77% failure rate in terms of business startups. So maybe that's not the best way to encourage entrepreneurship. And there was so much money going to administration. So I think we are looking for something more substantive. And my question for you, just based on what you're looking at in the hood and list the people you're listening to, do you think it's possible to get a mayor who will win and who will bring those authentic visions to the conversation? Or are we dealing with a different kind of politician in Detroit?
That's a great question, Donna. So one person that comes to mind, and it's not just because of my District 5 bias, but Mary Sheffield, to me, and this is not an endorsement because Bryce definitely does not study her career like that, but we've crossed paths with her career in ways that over these past years has given me the impression that like just that real energy, like that Kwame Kenyatta, that Marion Mahaffey type of energy, like, oh, this person cares. Got it. Like that's one thing about Detroit is for every sucker, you know what I'm saying, there are 2, 3, 4 people who still give a real damn, like who really, really care about Black people in Detroit. And Mary Sheffield does give me those vibes. So that's just me speaking, like responding to the out of the people who exist on earth right now. Could any one of those people possibly be somebody who moves a needle? And that's framing a conversation in terms of moving a needle. Personally, I'm not interested in moving the needle. I'm interested in creating a whole new whatever the device is. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever the needle's on, we need a whole new one of those.
We need a whole new meter.
A new meter. So yes, my first time feeling excited that we were in that kind of space was 2017, working on the campaign of Ingrid LaFleur, the mayoral campaign of Ingrid LaFleur. Yep. Like that was the first time in my life, in my adult life, where in my body, it actually felt like this is some really innovative shit that we're doing. Like this can lead to something, where that feeling was really authentic.
Mhm.
So
Shout out
what
to Ingrid LaFleur.
So
super
is she
shout
gonna
out.
run again?
She is not running again. She is in Kigali, Rwanda, doing amazing things.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
even know if she want to come back.
So is Mary gonna run?
hopefully, because at least it's like, at least that would represent something to believe in, to put some faith in for me. But do feel very strongly though that in this 21st century, it is time to do new work of developing. It's a new type of politicizing that must be done in the 21st century to develop our people for political office now. I appreciate and in deep gratitude and reverence to everything our ancestors did uh, in terms of popular education, in terms of politicizing our people, grassroots politicizing. That it was yeoman's efforts that were put in the 20th century. Uh, all of that work revered to the highest. At the same time, it's a different scenario. It's a different environment now, and politicizing means something different today. There are a lot of lessons to learn around organizing and mobilizing. Yet, uh, we have a unique situation now. That's all. We have unique disconnects, social and cultural disconnects that did not exist in the same way 50 years ago. Um, we have, we also have more multi-generational engagement uh, than we have ever had, to me, in the last 300 years, in a particular kind of way. So the opportunities to share information um, are are unique, and in a real way, it's an auspicious time for that. The level of analysis and synthesis that exists because we exist at a time where we have all of this access to information. Um, and by information, I'm not talking about the last 100 years. I'm talking about we have all this access to the last 5,000 years, the last 10,000 years, where we can actually look up things on the internet right now and reference periods of time where humanity was in right relationship with the earth and with the environment. Um, so this is a time now where we are to be designing the new politicians, designing the new community servants, designing the new custodians uh, to not just respond to the unique peculiarities of the 21st century, but actually be architecting and building out the new that we are all working towards.
Mm, I love
Brilliant.
it.
Listen,
Go ahead,
I
Donna.
think about that often that, prior to the New Deal, we didn't have Social Security, we didn't have Medicare, we didn't have child labor laws, we didn't have a 40-hour work week. And if you told somebody in 1925 those things are going to come to bear, they say that's not possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have gotten to a point where we don't believe that anything, only thing we do is we look back and say, well, what can we bring back? As if sometime in the past
Right.
we had it all right, and we've never had it all right. And that's the beauty of Afrofuturism, is that we imagine a world that has not been, understanding that new things can happen, but they can't happen without a vision, without a shared demand, without growing that vision. So I really appreciate your framing of this. And I'm gonna be talking about Afrofuturism. I really remember when Ingrid LaFleur was talking about it, but I really couldn't understand what she was talking about because I didn't take the time out to learn. I kind of regret that now. I didn't take the time out to learn what her vision was, but now understanding it, I think that it is important for us to imagine a better way, because we can't go back. I don't want to go back to any time in the past. You know,
Right.
we get nostalgic, you know, back in the day where everybody loved everybody. That never existed. And you know, back in that day, you still had a lot of pain and suffering. So I'm really hopeful that we can come together as humans, and I really look forward to actually meeting you, and
In
figuring out how we
person,
can work
right?
together,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, everybody was like, "How did you know each other?" And I'm trying to figure that out too. But thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you
Yeah,
both for
taking
having
time out of your busy schedule. We really appreciate we appreciate you taking us to school, Bryce. It's always a pleasure. You have to come back. There's never enough time to have a guest like you on. So thank
Appreciate
you
you.
for
Yes.
coming on. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Authentically Detroit, or email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. It is time for shout outs. I got a couple. Don, I want to shout out Ethan Dunn, who had a really nice write up in Cranes around his law firm, sort of practicing what they were preaching. In terms of, you know, counseling clients amid you know, bankruptcy and the pandemic and economic woes and things like that. It was really nice. So shout out to Ethan, a good friend of ours. We again want to acknowledge the passing of Marie Teasley, longtime journalist at Michigan Chronicle. I want to shout out my friend Tiffany Jackson, who is Benny Napoleon's daughter. She became my friend when she married my friend Alvin Jackson. And the rest of Sheriff Napoleon's family. You know, it's so hard to imagine, you know, me at 31 years old in Detroit where Benny Napoleon does not exist, because he's been a fixture my entire life, especially even when I began to become super engaged in civics in the city of Detroit back when I was 11 and 12 years old, walking in the doors at Warren Connor. Rest in peace to Sheriff Napoleon and to Joe Biden for winning the election almost every other day.
That's real. That's real.
He wins every other day. Donna, do you have any shout outs?
Not today. Not today.
Bryce, you got any shout outs?
I mean, just really shout out everyone who entered 2021 with an intention of making this year, not taking this year, taking what the year has to throw at them. But everybody who really walked in like, yes, I am going to make this 2021. Just super shout out all of us. And here's to that, for real.
All right. We thank you for listening. Happy New Year, everybody. We want you to
Happy New
catch the
Year.
waves. Talk to you soon.